as a woman biologist, how is it possible that I do not know what my own biology looks like? That's insulting, right? Okay, so you're mad. What are you going to do about it?
After studying the subject for a number of years, what did you find to be the greatest dilemma within the title, The Dilemma of Desire?
Well, the dilemma comes from the fact that the initial impetus for making the film was a book by a man named Daniel Bergner called The Science of Female Sexual Desire, What Do Women Want? And he went all around the country interviewing scientists who were studying female desire with women as subjects. It's kind of an unusual thing to do. And at the end of the book, the upshot of the entire book was women have as robust a sex drive as men. They're simply told lies about it to reinforce patriarchal structures. And so that to me is the dilemma. We are, half the population of the world. We have the same desires and needs as the male population does, and yet we are not free to act upon those desires. And if we do, we're shamed, killed, murdered, raped, you name it. And that's sort of the dilemma. I mean, as human beings, we should be allowed to have agency over all of our humanity. And certainly sexual desire is one of the most intimate forms of our humanity. And yet women are denied not only agency over it, but the language to even talk about it.
What are within the roots of America, in your opinion, that fosters almost a fear of creating an honest dialogue on sexuality, especially the sexuality of women? And what positive evolutions are you seeing that may change this circumstance?
So, we were founded by Puritans. What can I say? The film has had an amazing response in the US, but it's had an even bigger and accepting response in Europe. They have a less puritanical view of sex. And so, sex is about power. And so we don't want women so empowered. And by women, I mean femme identifying, anybody in a body born female, right? However you identify. Power wants to stay, those in power usually want to stay in power, and it's still white heterosexual men. And so to acknowledge that the other half of the population of the world is entitled to the same freedom and agency over their desires is to give up power. Because think about men, and if men were denied access to knowledge about their sex, you can't even think about this because it's ridiculous, but just try and imagine for a minute that men weren't told about their penises, what it was for, and they had really no idea where their sexual pleasure came from, and somebody told them that it came from, touching their elbows, okay? If you remove that knowledge from men, then you remove a vital source of their power. Yeah. I joke that Philip Roth would have had nothing to write about. He almost won the Nobel Prize. Okay, so that's what happens to women and those in a body born female. They're robbed of an essential source of their power. And so women's voices are silenced in 1,000 different ways. We're shamed and made to feel like we don't have a right to it. Now, what's improving? What's improving is that I think young people are refusing to fit into the binaries that I grew up with: male, female, heterosexual, or not even spoken about, right? Right. Like, like it wasn't like we labeled our aunts that didn't get married as lesbians. We just didn't talk about them. And so young people are saying, no, that doesn't work for us anymore. I don't want to be called male or female or lesbian or heterosexual. Just don't give me any of that. And so young people love this film. And so it's a kind of big support across the board. But so they're pushing to see this change.
One of the strange dichotomies of America in 2021 is the proliferation of sexual exploitation on one side, porn, objectification, use of sex to sell things, and the Puritan fear of sex on the other, and they coexist. How does one side feed the other and vice versa?
Well, they feed the other because basically we still live in a society that hates women. And I don't say that lightly. I mean, there are some better forms of porn which sort of show like women's desire and different tropes, but porn is a discourse about gender. And that gender is still that women are to be at the for use by men in whatever would they desire, and that they're not human beings, they're completely objectified, right? That exists in this culture because nobody wants to admit that that fear of women being so empowered. It's why we then say sex is shameful. We can't, you can't engage in it. You have the incredible political right, Christian right, punishing women, when a lot of times the people punishing women for being sexual are the priests and pastors and men who are getting them pregnant.
What did you learn about the relationship to your own sexuality, both in history and its influences, especially in the context of your film, on your life today?
Well, first of all, I would have told you I was a pretty with it woman when I started this film. And when I met Sophia Wallace in 2012, just to meet with her, that was the first time I saw what my clitoris looked like. Well, not my clitoris looked like, but the clitoris. And I was surprised that I had an organ on my body that I had no knowledge of, right? So let's start there. It's absurd that's what women have to put up with. And so there was a lot of sadness in me at that point, because although I'm a really great mom, I hadn't had a conversation with my own daughter about her body. It has to happen. Mothers need to speak to their daughters and share that knowledge. Well, I didn't have the knowledge, so I couldn't share it with her. Now my kids know all about the clitoris now. I mean, they're adults and they're really happy about that, right? But that's what I realized back in 2012, is that while I'd been a really great mother, I hadn't opened that conversation with her.
Finally, how would you pitch your film to an audience eager to learn what the film offers? And how would you recommend the path after the film to continue that education?
I would initially, pitching the film to people was difficult, because if we said the word clitoris, they got embarrassed. And so I would pitch the film to an audience telling them that this is really a film about power, and that power is easily taken when the truth is replaced with a lie. And that if you lie to someone about the simple truth of their anatomy, then you can lie to them about anything. And that at the very least, women are entitled to have their anatomy meet the bar for truth in a college level textbook. And that when it doesn't, that lie ripples out into our lives in 1,000 different ways. And so it's a source of our power, it's the source of our voice, and that we deserve to have our experience acknowledged in the bedroom, the boardroom, the classroom, the church, politics, in whatever way we all participate in society. I would then encourage people to go out and talk to a young person that they know, that person trusts. Because one of the goals in making this film, or I wanted a goal to be, was that, and I was willing to settle for high school, that every girl during her first year of high school knew what the clitoris looked like, where it was, and what it was for. I think if girls were so empowered with this knowledge, they would make different choices when they decided to become sexual. It's not that they wouldn't necessarily be sexual. It's that when they were saying yes to whoever they were saying yes to, they would do so with a sense of entitlement that they should get something out of the experience, and it's not pregnant. That this is a give and take, that sex should be a give and take between both people, and that young girls should not just be the receptacles of male pleasure, which is what they think right now.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2021.